This is Minecraft. Today, I'll be building the Minecraft world that I always wanted without a plan. This world features a mod pack called Conquest Reforged that adds thousands of new blocks to the game, as well as custom terrain generation and distant horizons. And today, I'll be sharing what it's like to start a fresh Minecraft world with these mods installed. Alrighty, welcome back to our Minecraft world. So my goal with this Minecraft world was I wanted to create the Minecraft world that I always wanted. And in the previous episode, we made this tavern here. The tavern rests on the top of a hillside here and acts as a rest stop for any weary travelers that are out in the woods. So my goal with the tavern was I really wanted to make something that felt really homey, but also very tavern-esque. So we obviously have things like the bar here with plenty of food, plenty of seating for everybody. I really like adding details in my build, so things like, you know, maybe a mercenary left his sword on the table, or people left their gold coins to pay for their tab. But as you can see, using mods like Distant Horizons, we have beautiful views from every single window of the tavern. Let's quickly head upstairs so I can showcase some of the bedrooms. But I'm really excited with how this tavern turned out. Today I want to actually continue building. Just outside of the tavern we have this beautiful open plot of land, and I can't wait to share with you guys what we're going to be building today. The channel has been growing really fast lately, so if you enjoy this type of content, this is just a quick reminder to check if you're subscribed. It's absolutely free and you can always change your mind later. So the first bedroom right off the stairwell here is the artist bedroom. And the goal with this room was I wanted to make a room that just felt like, well, every artsy person I know is very dysfunctional, so including myself, so I wanted to make the room kind of like disheveled, so maybe some notes with ink spilled on them, like a random boot, they don't know where the other one went. And like their main focus is their art, right? So I wanted every single room to kind of have a clear theme to really represent who is living in the room. So that's the artist room. And today I want to actually continue our building. So coming upstairs here, we have a beautiful little like game nook where you can play Gwent, or you could even sit down here and look at the fireplace below. I love every single space of this tavern, especially if we come out here, you can grab your coat. So using mods like Distant Horizons, we're able to see well beyond our view distance. So right now we can see 256 chunks. And what's really cool about this world is the landscape feels very handcrafted. Currently we're using Lithosphere and still life to create these vast, picturesque landscapes. Now what's really cool is normally you'd have to download a player-made map to get landscapes that look this good, but with these mods installed, you're able to just generate fresh new worlds, and your worlds will end up looking like this. So to me, it really gives the world that handmade, handcrafted feel. So stepping back inside now, let's check out some of the other bedrooms. We do have an attic space that I haven't quite finished yet, but that's definitely a project we could work on as well. Coming alongside here, we have a nice little reading nook that you can sit at, enjoy the view, enjoy a book or two. And let's step inside here. So this is the adventurer room, and I kind of like how it turns out. I think it has a nice feel of like, obviously he has his tools, some banners maybe of like war trophies, an elk that he's killed, some bounties, some keys, like an ammo crate, just different things, some gold coins. And what's kind of interesting with the adventurer here is that he's kind of a philosophical thinker, so he's really concerned about his mortality, which is why he has a time clock here. He has lots of books about philosophy. He likes to note down how he feels about life, but he's very much not like a philosopher. He's more of a warrior first, trying to understand his own life. So that's kind of my goal with that room. And then through here is actually my favorite room in the whole tavern. So this is the alchemist room, or the astrologer room, I'm sorry. And the astrologer is very messy, as you can see. He has books just all over the place, notebooks, scrolls, a sextant, a cartography table. I'm not really sure what this article could be referring to, but as you can see here, he has a nice little telescope looking up at the sky. So what's kind of ironic about the astrologer is he has the best view of the ocean, but he doesn't really pay attention to that. He mainly looks up at the sky. And one of the things he discovered is that the sun is actually a cube, which he noted down here. But what makes the astrologer room kind of unique is that it's actually 2 levels. So up here he has a small little loft that he can sleep at. definitely the best room in the entire tavern. So something I've been doing recently is giving each of my builds kind of a character to base them off of, and that really helped me with my design and building process. So instead of just designing flat basic rooms, thinking about who's actually living in those rooms really helped me craft rooms that I'm proud of. So let me know which room is your guys' favorite and which one you would personally stay in. Alright, looks like it's just turning sunset. So this is the perfect time to actually start building. And as you can see, using the BSL shaders, we have a beautiful sunset view. So my favorite view of the sunset is actually right down here. As you can see, we have beautiful light rays shining through here, illuminating the reading nook, as well as the huge fireplace right here in the center. So actually, before we go out and start building for the day, I want to grab some of these mounted pipes that we can add throughout the rooms. My goal with the tavern was I really wanted to go for a steampunk kind of feel, but I think I ended up with something a little bit more industrial, which I'm completely fine with. I really love the little details that we have throughout. So the storyline behind the tavern is that it was once a factory that basically was abandoned, and then they converted it to a place where people could live and enjoy themselves. So you can kind of see where they added some wood tutoring, or they made some repairs to the brick around the tavern here. And I think the texturing just really gives this build a lot of character. So what I really want to do is change up some of the piping here, add some rusted piping, and then I definitely want to add just a little bit of piping throughout the bedrooms. So in some of the bedrooms that look kind of plain, I think adding some pipes just running along the ceiling helps continue that theme of this being a more industrial kind of thing. And I don't want to totally overdo it. I think this is more of a subtle detail. But since we have so much verticality to play with, I feel like this is a good move to make. So I want to actually connect this piping through the doorway here. And we can't really do that with the straight piping here, but what we can do is if we press B on our keyboard, it brings up this nice GUI menu and gives us different variants of the blocks that we're using. So perfect, that's kind of the look I wanted to go for. Connecting through here. And then on the outside of the doorway here, I just want to add some more piping right there, just to help fill in that space a little bit. There we go. Now we have some additional maybe venting or just random pipes going throughout. I'm not really thinking so much about what these pipes could be specifically. They're mainly for decoration purposes. So it is a beautiful night here at the tavern. Nighttime is definitely my favorite time at the tavern, just because you have the warm Hearthfire here, warming everything up. And the tavern really stands out at nighttime because it's so warm compared to the coldness outside. And as you can see out there, we have a watchtower that we built before. So maybe we should head on over there and enjoy the nighttime air. And then in the morning, we can actually start our build for the day. So what's kind of cool about using mods like Distant Horizons is since we're building everything so far away from each other, it really helps decorate the landscape and gives the world more of a story. So now as we look out, the world doesn't seem so lifeless and empty. Now there's actually things to look out for. So for example, on the hillside here, we can see the tavern kind of glowing warmly against the blue sky there. And then we also have landmarks like the watchtower that's just over the hillside here. But I love walking through the woods at nighttime, especially in this combination of mods that we have here. It just really feels like Oblivion or maybe even Skyrim to me. But we have a beautiful little glow here from the shaders, and you can see the watchtower just glowing off in the distance. So eventually I do want to make roads connecting the tavern to the watchtower. I think that would be so much fun. And that's kind of another cool thing about having the builds be so far apart from each other, is that it gives you like excuses to build stuff. I think the longer you have a Minecraft world, sometimes it can be kind of difficult to like, okay, what do I build now, right? But I love to give myself just random little projects to, because the more time you spend in a Minecraft world, the more you're going to kind of get into the flow of creating. What's kind of cool about this world, with everything being so far apart, is it actually takes maybe 7 or 10 minutes to get from the tavern to the watchtower here. Now the watchtower was the first thing I actually built in this world, and I feel like it was the perfect first build. My thought process here was that the tavern is almost like this guiding light, or maybe a lighthouse type of thing that you can just see in the night. And initially the watchtower started off as an all wooden structure, but then I started experimenting around with this more industrial metal type vibe, and I'm really happy with how this turned out. So we have a beautiful view of the tavern over there, and the moonlight just looks amazing. Something I really like about the BSL shaders is actually the moving lanterns. That's one of my favorite features about this one. Let's step inside the watchtower here. Super cozy. You can see some piping going along here. And we might as well sleep for the night here, so that way we can wake up refreshed for tomorrow. So it's a beautiful day here, and this is the perfect time to actually start building. So I've been thinking of my Minecraft worlds more as story crafting rather than just mindlessly building. So with the tavern here accommodating so many guests and travelers, there's obviously a lot of food and drink flowing through this place. But the problem is we don't have any real explanation of where this food came from. So just outside the tavern we have this nice flat open land here. And I think this would be the perfect place to build a farm and a windmill, and it's going to be really cool. And we also have a nice view of the valley out this way as well. I don't really have an exact plan for what I want, but I do know I want a windmill right there on the highest point. And I really want to take advantage of the nice slopey hills here, so I want to have nice rolling hills of wheat and different materials and farmland. And what's kind of cool is with the tavern over here, we have a nice little cut through the woods to the farm over here. So just giving your world stories like that, I feel is a great way to come up with more ideas. And for me, Minecraft is more of an art project than it is anything else. I do enjoy playing survival mode, and if you guys are interested in seeing me start a survival mode playthrough of this mod pack, let me know in a comment. Alright, perfect. Yeah, I really like this flat piece of land here. This is going to be the perfect spot for a windmill. So right now the land is kind of empty, but it's going to be really fun to share my building process in real time with you guys, and to show that building isn't really a linear process. Sometimes you have some creative blocks, or maybe you just don't really know what to do. So I'm going to share like how I get over that kind of feeling, and hopefully you guys can pick up some tips or advice that you can apply to your own Minecraft worlds. So opening our creative menu here, you can see we have literally thousands of blocks to choose from, and it can be kind of overwhelming to decide what exactly, what blocks to use. But I'm just going to kind of grab a couple of, limestone or different textures of limestone, and just kind of start building out a base layer here. So whenever I'm initially designing a new build, I don't really think about the specifics so much. I just think about the general shape and layout that I want. So if I hold Alt on my keyboard, you can see it brings up a menu, and this is a mod called Axiom, which really helps with building. So the tools I have enabled are Fast Place and Infinite Reach, and this is really helpful for something like this, because this allows me to get a nice perspective of my build. So I honestly have never built a windmill before in Minecraft, so I'm not really sure how well this is going to turn out, but my idea is I want a 7x7 base layer here, and an additional tool that we have in Axiom is actually the Extrude tool. So what I want to do is bring this up, I would say about 7 blocks, because I do want the windmill to be a nice prominent feature here on the mountainside. And then from here, what I would actually like to do is bring the blocks inward one. So now we have a 5x5. So now we have a nice gradient from 7x7 to 5x5. So at first the windmill is going to look very simple and blocky, but as we slowly start detailing it out, it's really going to take shape here. And that to me is kind of the fun of building in real time with you guys, because I can share like sort of my building process in real time. So the way I think about building is I don't necessarily think about exactness. I just think about getting a basic shape and then coming in after the fact and actually detailing it out. So the one key thing I really want to get done here is actually the wind sail itself, because I think this is going to be the most difficult part for me personally, because I've never done a windmill. And what I want to go for is just something like this. Very basic. So I have to be super careful with the shape of this windmill, otherwise I'm going to get demonetized, but that's sort of the basic look that I want to go for here. And then just using some placeholder blocks here. Something I really love about this world is how during sunset, the world just has this beautiful orange glow. And the windmill is just going to fit so perfectly here. Especially with all these rolling hills we have around it. We're just going to fill it with all kinds of crops, and it's just going to look really lush. And now what I want to do is actually fan out the shape here and make the wind sills like a little bit larger. So I'm not really too concerned about the exactness of the windsills. I feel like if there's slight deviations in the shape, it's almost it almost adds a little bit more character, just to kind of show that it may be moving in the wind a little bit. I feel like that looks pretty good. I'm going to quickly adjust some of the shapes here. So where mods like Conquest Reforged really stands out is if I press B on my keyboard, you can see it brings up this beautiful GUI menu of all the different block states that we have. So I'm going to actually turn our wool here into stairs, slabs, and vertical slabs. And now from here, we can actually further texture out our windmill. So we can have like really small incremental little bits here just kind of forming with the windmill, which I think looks really, really cool. This is almost a, I don't really have like a clear shape for the windmill exactly. I think some of the things are going to kind of change here. But this is the idea that I wanted to go for. Just super flowy, super, like all over the place basically here. And I think the actual shape of the windsail is really, really kind of doing it for me. I might change up the base of the windmill a little bit later on, but for now I'm kind of happy with what we have. Now what I want to do is maybe add some stairs on some of these lower bits here. Just being super artsy about it. Yeah, what do you guys think of that? I think that looks like a nice convincing windsail. And let's just come in here and lightly texture out what we have. I think to further illustrate a sense of motion in the windsail here, I might add some like hints of tinted glass or something just around. And we might also actually change the fences, and so instead of using fences, we might do something a little bit different for that. So what's kind of cool with Conquest Reforged is all the different blocks are paginated, and what I want to do is actually go to this water and air section here, and I kind of want to grab these clouds here. What's kind of cool with these is they're like a semi-translucent kind of look, and I think just adding that to the windsail really, I don't know, it's something kind of different. I've never built like this before. This world is definitely more of a fantasy kind of thing rather than it being like a strictly realistic like look and feel. I'm not really sure what I'm trying to go for here, but I want it to just kind of appear that the windsail is generating air movement here. So if you guys have a better way of kind of showing that, let me know. Something really helpful that Axiom adds is this option called angel placement. And what we can do with this is kind of add air that's not connected to any sort of blocks here. I think that looks pretty cool actually. Definitely want to change up the texturing here with the stairs. Not the biggest fan of the stairs that we have here. Or fences, I should say, actually. So actually looking through my creative menu here, I noticed we have these things called vertical wooden beams. And this is actually, I think, exactly what I was looking for. So as you can see, it adds this really cool, basically beam looking thing. And what I'm going to do is kind of fill in our corners. And this will kind of create that staircase look that I was going for. But instead of using fences, I'm going to use these beams. And what's really cool with this is, again, they're paginated as well. So we can grab vertical beams like this, kind of lay them out like that, just to kind of show that the windmill is kind of connected in sort of a way here. It's not just like floating. So let's add these beams just kind of along the way here. And I'm actually really excited that I get to share my design process with you guys, because this is sort of out of my comfort zone. I've never actually done a windmill like this. So I'm hoping it kind of turns out nice. That's like the hope of every YouTuber, that their idea kind of translates well to video. And just like that, I feel that looks a little bit more interesting than just using plain old fences. Something I kind of want to experiment around with is actually using trapdoors to kind of show that this is connecting down to the sail itself. This kind of acts as like a transitionary sort of block. And again, the goal, my whole design process here is I don't want it to be perfect the first time. I don't really mind if it doesn't turn out exactly how I want it, because we can always come back in later and actually tweak it. But I think this looks fantastic. So what do you guys think? Should we have the windmill facing towards the farm, or should we have it going out this way, as in the windsail is kind of catching the wind from the valley. I think it would kind of make sense if it was more towards the valley, which kind of presents us with an interesting dilemma. Normally we would have to rebuild everything that we've made, but luckily using tools like Axiom, we can simply move things around. So let's actually select our different points that we have here. And I'm going to make sure everything is correctly bounded here. And what I want to do is simply rotate it over and then confirm. And now we have the windmill kind of catching the wind from the valley outside here. So I don't really like how blocky the inside here is. So I'm going to just bring it in a single block like this. So just bring it in a single block to help kind of thin it out. And there's some additional blocks we can kind of play around with to really give this windmill that rounded look that I want to go for here. I think ultimately, I'm not really too sure what the specifics are about windmills. I don't know if they're supposed to be placed in like a valley type situation like this, or if the wind would kind of, I'm not really sure how the wind kind of works, but I think for some reason I feel like having it placed this direction just makes a little bit more sense. But part of me also likes the idea of the windmill facing this way, so if you're coming to the windmill from the tavern, you're kind of greeted with that look. So kind of an idea I had is to just double up the windmill blades. This definitely does not make a whole lot of sense, but I just kind of like the idea of that. And again, we haven't even really started detailing out our build, but I do want to attach like a small little house to the side of the windmill here, just because I genuinely feel like that's sort of what would be here. And then we can also kind of construct a story maybe about the farmer who lives here and kind of tends to the fields, and maybe the relationship that he has with the tavern that's right next door. But yeah, I absolutely love just freeform building like this because in a way it's almost problem solving, trying to figure out, you know, what exactly am I wanting? Because I knew I wanted a windmill, but I didn't know the style that I wanted it in or any of the specifics. So this is kind of fun to show that, you know, building isn't really this like, building doesn't always come intuitively sometimes. Sometimes you just kind of have to mess around and see what you come out with. So right now I want to actually add a roof to the windmill because I feel like this will help mentally just help me shape out what I'm wanting here exactly. So I think I'm going to actually get rid of the second wind sail here because I want to, I don't know, it just feels a little bit too cluttered if I have both. And the goal here for the farmhouse, well, it's not really even going to be a farmhouse. It's more just going to be the storage room for the windmill here. But I'm intentionally not filling in the corners because I just feel like it adds a nice subtle depth to everything. So for the roof here, I think I just want to go for something like this, where we have stairs on one layer. And then the next layer is going to actually be a full block. And I'm not really sure what the specific name of this style of roof is, but I feel like once we have the roof on here, this layout that we have is going to make a lot more sense. I feel like roofs are a really underrated part of builds just because they really make or break a build in my opinion. I think going for a steeper roof like this is really gonna make the windmill look a lot better, especially from this angle down here. And I think closer to the top will slowly convert down to stairs instead of full blocks, just to kind of help round out the top of the roof. Or we could almost leave it flat as well. I'm not really too sure what I want to do with this exactly. We could at the very least add like a little lip to the roof like right there. I think that just helps balance it out a little bit. But so far the windmill just looks fantastic, especially in the moonlight here shining through. And I'm kind of curious to see what the windmill is going to look like from the watchtower, because I think having the wind sail on this side is going to translate very well when we look at it from that direction. But now that it's nighttime, let's actually head back over to the tavern and see if we can find more ideas from our previous build. So something I really enjoy doing whenever I kind of run out of ideas is I love to look at the builds that we've done previously. Specifically, I really like looking at the texturing. So here I noticed I used some limestone spolia and gray plaster. So we can take these blocks that we have here and translate it over to our windmill. I really love how the tavern looks at nighttime. You can just see the warmth from the inside glowing outside, really contrasting the cold, cool night air. And eventually I do want to make a nice long pathway through the woods up here to the tavern. But for now, I want to get our farm set done. So yeah, this is just so warm and inviting. I definitely imagine like bards in here just singing like, maybe not sea shanty songs, but something like that. In here just like eating bread, enjoying the moment here. It's just a very merry and cozy place, very homey. And then maybe if you're more of a thinker type, you can come here, read some books. I don't know what it is about this specific spot, but I really like the reading nook, even though it is supposed to be like a bar. Just feels really cozy and homey to me. I think like maybe the story behind the tavern is that the owner is basically, this is his home that he just invites people into. I think the room that really stands out to me, especially during the nighttime, is actually the astronomer's room. Especially with this big open window, he gets to see all the stars like twinkling and flying through the sky at night. Gets to write down his notes. But let's head to sleep for the day and actually start working on the windmill tomorrow. Alright, it's a beautiful new morning here, and this is the perfect time to start building our windmill. I think what we have here, even though it looks really basic, we have a lot of potential to work with here. So initially I wanted to go for more of a limestone cobble look, but I think going for brick would actually be kind of interesting. So I'm gonna toggle the replace mode here, so that way we can quickly texture out the build here, quickly replacing the cobblestone with brick. Brick isn't really a block that I use a lot of, so I think in this world it's kind of fun to experiment around with. And then maybe to contrast the brick, the actual house that you could live in, or the little storage shed connected to it, is going to be this lighter brick here. And now what we can kind of do is slowly texture it out to plaster here. Yeah, I feel like this just immediately looks a lot better than it being plain old cobblestone. I think texturing is a huge part of builds. So I'm not going for like exact texturing here, but I do want to add like little bits maybe where the brick kind of chipped away with time. I'm not really sure what would have come first, like the windmill or the tavern. I feel like they both kind of are these repurposed buildings. So maybe what we can do is replace some of this brick with plastered cobblestone, basically, is what this is. I think that has a nice little blend to it. And to kind of help blend it further into the plastering here, we have like a more worn variant. So basically I'm basically feathering out, so the inside is the most well protected, then outside it slowly deteriorates more. So I definitely picture like a really nice big open window looking out towards the fields here. So I think at the top here I'm gonna leave some space for a window right there. Now what's really cool about Conquest Reforged is we have so many different varieties of windows that we can play around with. So I really am a big fan of these like archways here that we can do. And then up here in the big window, we can do something like that. Looks kind of cool to me. So what I want to do is actually start filling in some of our corners, because that'll help round off the build and make it look a little bit less blocky. And it just adds, to me, that kind of fixes the blockiness of the windmill. It's just cutting out the corners like that. And I want to do the same thing along all four corners. What's kind of nice is we can take every single block and switch it to every variant. So for example, so what's so cool is that every single block has variants like this. So for example, we can take our plaster and turn that into vertical quarters as well. So it's kind of nice. It's like every single block has different variants that you can choose from. So basically what I'm doing here is whatever blocks were there originally, I'm just going to replace it with the quarter variant like that. So that way we still get that texturing. But the cool thing about Conquest Reforged is that everything is very incremental, so it gives us plenty of options to actually blend things together. I think this looks pretty cool. Actually looks like it's starting to rain now as well. So to kind of help the roof seem a little bit less over the top, I want to actually add these little gables here. And these are basically just going to be windows that are looking out of the attic here. Basically acting as a second floor. For now, I'm just going to start off basically outlining where I want the windows, and then we can come in later and actually detail it out. But you can see that, like, just shape-wise looks immediately a lot better. And something I've learned over time is that builds aren't set in stone, so we can always change up the build as we continue building it. So for example, with the tavern here, this build changed up plenty of times over the course of building it. So it's good to be flexible when you're building, like don't be so set that things have to be a certain way. Just kind of adapt to how you're feeling and what kind of fits the build you're working on. And actually while we're over at the tavern, I want to grab these andesite as well. And what I want to do is take the andesite and just kind of basically dot it into the corners here. And again, these are the andesite slabs, so they kind of stick out from the wall a little bit. But I think that just adds a nice little depth to everything. So what's really fun about the texturing here is we can actually, to make this texturing look a little bit more convincing, let's come in with our brick slabs like this. And now it actually looks like the brick was chipped away and it's revealing what's underneath it. So I love to do stuff like this. It's kind of a building trick I learned recently with Conquest Reforged, but that to me just looks significantly better. Now it actually looks like the brick was chipped and this is what's underneath it. So let's just simply do that all along where we have some texturing. What's kind of funny is that in real life you want your builds to be perfect and like measurements to be exact, but in video games like Minecraft, you kind of want them to be like blotchy and almost textured out. So I'm going to do exactly the same thing here underneath some of the andesite. Just bring out the brick a little bit. And whenever we get more of a zoomed out look, you'll see that this is going to look significantly better than where we started. So that's why it's kind of something I really struggle with whenever I'm building a project from scratch is I don't really know what the finished product looks like. And sometimes it can be kind of demotivating because it looks so ugly in the beginning. But, you know, you have to just be patient with yourself and just trust the process. So let's actually open up our GUI menu here and grab full andesite bricks. And what I want to do with these is add a clear separation from the windmill and our build that we have here. So I'm going to actually use andesite as like our little corners here. This will just kind of help further illustrate that, hey, the windmill and this build is kind of separated. So kind of as I was building this, I think right over here would be the perfect spot for a balcony, and that will kind of, at least to me, mentally help me connect the tower to the little barn that's here. So my initial thought was to actually make this second layer here the balcony, but part of me also likes the idea that there's like tiered balconies. So there's a lower one here, and then maybe an outer one on this side here. So what I was thinking for the balcony on this level is you can kind of access it from the roof here. Kind of connects out, lets you walk around the outside of the windmill. Yeah, and I'm really excited with the progress that we're making with the build right now. I feel like just adding that little balcony here is really starting to make this build feel like a windmill. And I love how we can see the watchtower off in the distance. I really can't wait to see what this windmill looks like from over there. But this idea of there being multiple like floors and tiers to this, it really, it kind of works for me, I feel like. So I kind of, I got rid of the corner here and added our balcony here to the side. Just because I really like the idea of there being a balcony on this side for some reason. Maybe the idea here is that you can watch over the fields. And this sunset just looks unreal right now. So at this point, I really feel like my creativity is starting to flow easily now. And even though the windmill is far from finished, I definitely feel like I'm in that creative flow state now. So whenever you're starting off a build, don't get discouraged if it doesn't start off exactly how you want. Just give yourself time to ease into it and you'll eventually start coming up with more and more ideas. So for now, I want to take a break from decorating the windmill and actually start working on the farmland around it. So initially my goal was to just fill this land with rolling hills of wheat, but it ended up looking very plain and very cluttered, so I have a different idea that I really want to work on. But so far I really like the way the windmill looks. I definitely want to change the way some of the materials kind of look, but other than that I really like the shape that we have here. And I love that we have a beautiful overview look of the valley below us. So what I want to do is actually start outlining the plots of land that I want to use for the farms. And I'm going to do that using some stone here. So I think what's kind of cool about this is I want to outline it with the stone at first, and then on the inside here I'm going to actually replace this with dirt. So the stone is going to act as this separator basically. So building farms is kind of outside of my comfort zone. It's not something I normally do. And I'm really curious to see how this is going to turn out once it's finished. But for now, I kind of want to just follow along the landscape that we have here. Just following the natural curvature of the mound here. I feel like this will give us the best shape. But yeah, my initial idea for the farm was that it was all going to be just kind of connected together without any sort of separation. And at first I thought it looked really cool, but I think having the different farmlands separated by plot is really going to help it look a little bit cleaner. So as you can see here, we have just a couple of different plots outlined with our stone here. And additionally, we have another hillside right here. I think this would be another great spot for some land. So what's going to be kind of cool about this is that it'll sort of explain why the tavern has such an abundance of food. And it basically acts as a decoration. So normally whenever I build farms in Minecraft, I just kind of build them from the perspective of a survival player. So they're very functional, but they're not really pretty to look at. So this is kind of cool. This is going to be purely for decoration. So now, as you can see, we have some plots outlined here. And I want to add just one more plot right over here in this corner. I think that'd be a fun little spot for something. But I love the idea of the farms having this really like free-flowing kind of shape. Not really super structured, just very, basically just follows the land that's underneath it. And kind of looking at what we have here, I think it'd be really awesome if we added a small little river running through here. So it wouldn't really make a whole lot of sense, but I was thinking just on the bottom side here, we'd have a small little river and then maybe right here is like a larger body of water. So maybe a little bit later on we'll figure out how we want to implement that in. So for now, I want to actually bring up some of the parts of the stone walls that we have here. So for that, all I'm going to do, so I want to actually start bringing up some of the parts of the stone walls here. And for that, I'm just going to kind of work on the corners here and just kind of bring these up a little bit, almost to a point. And the whole point here is I just want a very basic outline of the finished product. I'm not really trying to build something that's finished right now. I just want like a very basic idea, and then I can come in later and actually start detailing it out. So we can see already the farm is slowly starting to take shape, and I gotta be honest, as I was building this farm, I feel kind of nervous as this is so far out of my comfort zone of what I normally build, so it's gonna be kind of cool to like see how this build progresses over time. But I think just by adding little changes in elevation in some of the walls, it really helps kind of show that these are walls and they're not just blocks on the ground here. Oh man, just working in the fields during the sunset just looks so amazing. I can definitely imagine like the farmer. I'm trying to think as I'm building what the farmer is going to kind of be like. Maybe he's a hermit. Maybe he's like just this friendly old guy who loves to farm. But you can actually see right on the other side of the hill here is actually the smoke from the tavern. So these farms that are building are meant to supply our tavern with fresh food. But getting an overhead shot of the windmill and the farm layout, I really like this layout. Now it's time to actually start planting crops. So now that we have the outline of where we want our farms to actually be, I'm going to come in here using a tool called Axiom and actually start painting in our plots of land. So you can see we're very quickly able to come in here and paint a large portion of the farmland here. And my goal isn't to fill the entire area with dirt, it's just to fill in portions of it. I feel like that looks a lot more natural than if it was all dirt. All right, now what I want to do is with our directional farmland, I want to actually come in here and start making like little rows of crops. So we're not going to be filling in the entire dirt plot here. We're just going to kind of blotch in little sections that they actually grow on. And what's kind of cool about doing it this way is we can take our dirt and actually blend it out into the grass around it. And I feel like this will help just give everything a nice gradiated, natural sort of look. So I'm mainly a structure builder, and my goal here is I'm just kind of applying the same principles of structures, but to farmland, because this is definitely not something I'm used to doing. And now I'm going to take things like our potatoes here, and just kind of place these down, and I turned my game tick speed up so that way the crops can grow a lot faster. Already things are starting to bloom here. And what's kind of cool about sectioning off the build like this is that in between all the crops here, we can add like little pathways that the farmers can walk along to harvest everything. And yeah, things are starting to fill up now, which is perfect. So that's our little potato section done. Maybe over here we could have some corn growing. And again, whenever you're building without a plan, it can be kind of intimidating, right? Because you're not really sure, okay, how's this going to turn out? But you kind of just have to trust the process that, you know, if you do mess up, you can always come in and change it later. But I really, really love the way this looks right now. This looks fantastic. Now for these big sections, what I want to actually do is more circular type patterns here for the wheat. So I'm just going to kind of outline a small little circle here with our farmland. And again, my whole goal here is I don't necessarily want a finished product. I just kind of want an outline and a rough idea of what I want, because then it's a lot easier to actually detail and become more specific. So I guess the best way to describe it is I start off very vague and then I get gradually more specific. Now let's take our wheat plants and just kind of grow these in here. And this farm is really going to come to life once we have all the crops placed in here. So I think immediately our windmill is really starting to look like a farm now. So originally I wanted there to be a little bit more grass on the edges, but as I'm placing the weeds here, I kind of noticed that it doesn't look as blended as I thought. So maybe we'll just kind of only have really small patches of grass rather than it being more prominent. We can kind of fill in this space now with more crops here. So what I want to actually do here is along the edges of the farmland, I'm just going to quickly texture this out a little bit. Basically replacing the majority of the grass with our dirt here, and then kind of coming in here and rounding off the crops here. Just to give the, I want the wheat to look very flowy, very just like full, so that way, like from a distance as you're walking up to the windmill here, it looks nice and like healthy. So yeah, this is kind of the vision that I wanted to go for here. Just nice rolling fields of wheat, and then the windmill right on top there. So in this larger plot of land here, I think this would be the perfect place to add a small little vineyard, which would help explain why the tavern always has an abundance of wine and beer to drink. So I'm not really sure what exactly makes a vineyard, but kind of pictures I was seeing online, they sort of look like this. They have some posts here kind of going along like that. And these to me are going to kind of act like little branches. So yeah, building a vineyard, definitely not something I've done before, but I think it's really fitting for a world like this. And then what I want to do underneath all these fences is add some berry bushes like this. Yeah, this is so much fun kind of sharing with you guys my real-time process here. But this is definitely something I've never done before, is actually building a vineyard in one of my worlds, but I feel like for a world like this, it just kind of makes sense. And I'm kind of using these posts as like basically visual guides to sort of show where my berry bushes should kind of go here. And the goal with the vineyard here is I want nice flowy lines. So kind of what I want to do in some strategic places like this is I will actually bring up some of these poles here. It doesn't have to be every single spot, but definitely on the ends here, we want these to be a little bit taller. So this is where things like angel placement really comes in handy, because as you can see, we're able to place our leaves midair without having to actually have anything to place them on. And I want our vineyard to have this nice verticality to it. So I'm just going to kind of follow this pattern that I have here. And also I like the idea of maybe along the way you have some of these high points here that are kind of connecting to the bushes. I think that looks really, really cool. And maybe like on the edges here, it's sort of doubled up here. I think that looks pretty good. We have like some supports just spread throughout. And I'm going to kind of repeat that same little pattern all the way around. This is kind of the pattern that I want to go with here. Just kind of nice, lofty little vines. What we can kind of do is in the middle sections, maybe where it needs more support, we can double up the supports like that. And what's really cool about these rustic fences is they actually extend upwards past like the block. And it basically makes it look like it's actually going into the leaves, which is really, really nice. So what do you guys think of the vineyard so far? I feel like this is the perfect little theme here. I think I definitely have to get used to things like angel placement here. It's a little bit trippy to use at first, but once you get the hang of it, it just kind of makes sense. So it's a nice rainy day here at the vineyard, but I really am happy with how this turned out. At first I was kind of nervous because I didn't really have an idea of what I wanted, but I think this turned out better than I expected. And now all we have to do is kind of come in here on the bottom and just fill in with some berry bushes here. So we could definitely spend more time detailing the farm, but I think for now I want to head back to the windmill and actually get that part of the build finished. But I'm really happy with the layout that we have here. We have these huge open fields full of crops and full of wine, and this helps ensure that the tavern is well stocked for all the travelers coming through here. And also what's kind of cool is we even have this open plot of land right here that's in between the tavern and the windmill. I think this would be a fun little spot for like a storage shed, and we can even see the watchtower from here as well. And looks like the sun is starting to come out, which is perfect. So now I want to actually start working on the windmill here. And I think from this side the windmill looks kind of plain, but once we get a roof on the top here I think it'll look a little bit better. So part of me actually wants to take another windmill and add it on this side too, or at least the windmill blades, but I'm not quite sure about that. Right now we just kind of have a shell of a building, but maybe we'll give it a try here just to see what it looks like at least. So if we add the windmill blade on this side too, you can see it kind of clips into the roof here. So right now I just want to get the roof on the windmill here. There we go. That to me looks a little bit better than it just being a flat roof at the top. So now that the sun is starting to set, I think this is the perfect time to work on some of the lighting around the farm. So opening our creative menu here, we can simply scroll over to lighting. And let's look for the perfect lanterns. I think we want to go for these big lanterns right here. So I'm undecided between a ship lantern or the big lantern. I think I might go for the big lantern. That just looks a little bit nicer to me. So I just kind of want to dot some lanterns around the farmland here. I'm not going for exact placement here. I just want a rough little, just something so that way it's not totally dark here. Kind of a good spot to do them is definitely on the corners here. And I love how during the nighttime everything just has a beautiful blue glow. And I think it's going to look really cool once this whole project is finished. And what's kind of cool about Conquest Reforged is it can be as detailed or as simple as you'd like it to be. For now we're starting off very simple, but whenever we'd like to, we can definitely come in and start detailing even these little divider walls that we have set up here. So just like we were detailing the walls of the windmill here, we can do the same exact thing to these walls where we have different slabs, different shape blocks here. And that's the final one there. So I like that it gives us kind of options to do as we like here. I think whenever you're doing really big projects like this, you have to really just kind of give yourself miniature tasks. So for me, I do everything one thing at a time. I'm not really thinking about, oh, how to like do the pathway between everything. I'm just kind of focused on, okay, right now I just want lighting. And then after that, it's something else. So I just do everything piece by piece, and that kind of helps me stay committed and actually finish projects. Otherwise, it can be super overwhelming to try and think about the project in a grand scale. But what do you guys think of the windmill so far? I think this just looks absolutely stunning. So right now we have a nice basic outline of how we want the windmill to look. I think it's time we actually head to the tavern and rest for the night. What's kind of cool now, since we spaced out the builds a little bit, is we can actually make a path from the tavern to the windmill. And eventually I also want to make a smaller pathway all the way out to the watchtower over there. I'm really excited with the world so far, and I can't wait to get this windmill finished. So making my way back to the tavern, I feel like something's actually missing here. The tavern looks stunning, but I think we're actually missing a nice little fence out front. I feel like that'll really help connect the tavern to the world around it. So the fence isn't going to be anything too drastic, but I'm going to kind of follow the principle of what we did over by the windmill and just kind of bring it over to the tavern. So I'm just going to kind of pick some spots, specifically like little corners, where I can add in our little fence. So I'm going to use andesite as like a temporary block here. And I want to have like a proper gated entrance to the tavern. So what I'm going to do is kind of outline where I want an archway. And nothing here is kind of finalized. I just want a basic little shape here. And actually, I think I want to go for limestone cobble instead, just because it's a little bit darker. It looks a little bit more interesting. So I want a beautiful arched little entrance leading up to the tavern here. And what works really good in this situation is actually this wrought iron gate that we have here. So I feel like this looks so much better leading up to the tavern rather than it just being open. And it's not necessarily to keep travelers out, but it is to give the tavern like a safe presence here in the woods. So kind of the idea here was that in between all these stone bits is going to be a wooden fence. Just to kind of show like it's the fence is mainly for decoration rather than it being, you know, a protector. And kind of the vision I had for this is that on top of the fences here, we can actually do leaves like this. That kind of adds this nice little hedge sort of effect here. And I feel like it helps just kind of soften up the fence. Basically my goal for this fence is it's more of a divider than it is anything else. It's not really supposed to be like super defensive. Now I just want to add some stairs just to kind of help round them out, make it look just a tad bit nicer. Yeah, even though it's kind of a simple little idea here, I think it looks kind of nice. So I definitely want to add some hanging oil lamps on the outside here, just to kind of help illuminate the exterior just a tiny little bit. So let's head inside for the night and rest up, because tomorrow we're going to finish our windmill. And I absolutely love coming back to the tavern. Every time I come back to this build, I always feel kind of inspired with, you know, the tavern took a lot longer than I originally thought it would, but the end result was really something I was proud of. So it's another beautiful morning here. And with the rough outline of the windmill done here, now it's time we work on the actual building. So I really like the general shape of the windmill, so now it's time to just finish up some of the exterior details. So I really like the brick on the main windmill itself, but I'm not too sure how I feel about the stucco on this side. Maybe what I'll do here is actually continue the brickwork all the way around, just so we have a little bit of continuity. And that's kind of the fun of doing these larger Minecraft builds, because I think the key to really enjoying Minecraft in general is to take your time with it. It is for me, Minecraft is more of a creative outlet than it is like a video game. So I really enjoy taking my time with, you know, obsessing over the details, like, you know, making sure my color palettes are perfect, or making sure the things are exactly how I want them to be. So I'm going to grab some of these andesite here. And I think to me the brick looks significantly better. So I'm going to grab some of my andesite here and just kind of throw these along the corner of the builds here. Just kind of continuing the same theme that we have. And then I also want to start working on the gables that are up here on the roof. And what I want to do for these is just kind of bring out my roof like that. So the reason I wanted to add these windows up here on the roof is because I really do genuinely feel like this just helps the roof look a little bit more interesting. And even doing something simple like this, even though it's not really a well thought out idea, I think just adds to the overall aesthetic and feel of the build here. And also, if we want to expand the interior of the build, we can actually do that now. So kind of the cool thing with having these windows on the second floor is now if we want to, we can expand upwards and give this windmill kind of a second floor little build here. So let's come in here, kind of continue. So I want to do the same thing on this side. And this build overall was definitely something that was out of my comfort zone. And at first I was definitely nervous to try and, I was kind of nervous to undertake this project, but I'm glad I did, because I feel like overall the general idea I wanted was translated pretty well here. So we have a nice cozy little windmill with an attached kind of storage shed house to it. Maybe I want to change up the windmill blade, but I'm kind of happy with what we have here. It's nice and kind of chunky, kind of elongated in some places. Not totally symmetrical, but it looks pretty cool at least. So I want to actually start working on our little exterior balcony here. I'm not really sure what purpose this would actually serve in the building, but I do like the idea of there being a balcony here. And also I feel like the balcony helps, the balcony kind of adds like a unique little shape to the build here. Sometimes your builds don't have to flow perfectly together. I think I'm not really a huge fan of symmetrical builds. I just love builds that have character. So having parts that kind of stick out from the build, it really helps to me just make the build feel more grounded and more interesting. So something I want to start doing is actually adding in some archways. So taking my brick here, I'm going to grab some Gothic archways, and I'm just going to throw these along the windows here. And maybe we'll just kind of continue that theme on the bottom floor here. Just have some arched windows, and we'll do the same thing on this side as well. I feel like our windmill has a really nice shape overall, but for me something just feels a little bit off about it, so I'm going to see if I can fix that in the decorations. So for me, it's kind of hard to explain, but sometimes builds don't really pan out the way I want them to exactly. So if I'm ever like unhappy with the build, what I like to do is actually come in and add some details like this. So adding in some archways up at the top floor here. I feel like that just helps the tower feel a little bit nicer. And I want to do the same thing here where I add a window on the bottom floor here. I guess this windmill almost has a clock tower kind of feel to it with these windows. But I don't really mind it, I actually kind of like it. So we're just going to continue our archways here. And while we're here, let's actually fix up our roof. This actually looks so cool, especially with the nice warm sundown in the background. So I want to actually add some hanging lanterns on some of the walls here. Normally I wouldn't do regular lanterns in something like Conquest Reforged, but I think this looks pretty cool. Something else I also really like about the BSL lanterns is they actually sway in the wind, which looks really nice. So in a real windmill, there would actually be some like gears up here, but I kind of just want to add a light up here for now. This windmill is definitely way more aesthetic than it is like actually functional, but I think just adding some simple lights really helps this build look a little nicer. I feel like the roof is a little bit awkward, so what I want to do is actually extend it upwards with more stairs. At first I liked the flat roof idea, but I think going for like a true pointed roof at the top is going to help this flow a little bit nicer. So I'm just going to continue the roof line all the way up. And then at the top, add a stair. Yeah, I think that looks pretty nice. The roof almost has this like fantasy curve kind of look to it. So we'll go with that. So something I was thinking about doing to help fix this side of the build is actually add another balcony over here. Now I'm not really sure how this is going to turn out, but I think it might actually kind of help because that's just sort of the idea I intuitively came up with here. So it's not going to be a huge balcony, but it's just going to be just enough to stick out and just add, you know, a little bit of character and a little bit of flavor to this side of the build. Because personally I feel like this wall is just a little bit flat. And maybe we can kind of fit the same theme with the farmhouse here as we did with the tavern. So the theme of the tavern was it is kind of run down in some places, but people are still living in it. So I want to carry that same theme over to our farmhouse. So while we're over here, I want to actually grab some of this tutoring, that way we can throw it on the second floor. So I think by replacing the brick on the second floor here with tutoring, it looks a little bit nicer. It looks more accurate to what I was thinking of initially. But what I really want to do is, initially I wanted the windmill to be its own kind of aesthetic, but now I kind of want to match what I did with the tavern just because I'm kind of familiar with the style now. So what I mean by that is what we're going to do is come in here, and maybe in some of the corners here that are a little bit plain, all I'm going to do is simply replace the blocks. I don't want to make it too drastic. This is just more of a, you know, just a very light texturing that we're doing here. So things like continuing the texture all the way over. I want to do like a very light blotch right here. So I decided to actually replace the brick on the second floor with some wood tutoring. I feel like this looks a little bit nicer than it being brick on the second floor. And let's actually continue our balcony here now. So I wasn't sure how this balcony would end up looking, but I really like it actually. I think it's just different enough that it helps break up the monotony of the build. And seeing the moon over the horizon just looks fantastic. And a little bit later on, I want to actually head towards our watchtower. Before, when we would look over here, it was just an empty hillside. But now, seeing the windmill off in the distance is going to look really cool. I think the build is really coming together. Once we have some proper pathways throughout here, it's really going to look like a farm. So to help kind of frame out the tutoring on the second floor, I'm just going to add some vertical slabs like that to help bring it out from the wall. And this is one of those details that I think on the surface is small, but it really adds up. And I want to do the same thing with our brick. I'm going to grab our vertical slabs and just kind of texture out around where the wall is kind of like broken. And that just helps naturally create like a clear distinction between like, okay, this part of the wall is busted and this part of the wall is actually like fixed. So kind of an easy decoration we can throw in here is some window planters. So on some we'll have window planters, on others we won't. I think if we did window planters on every single window, it wouldn't really hit as much. So I think kind of changing it up on some of these is kind of the right call here. But on things like on the top of the tower here, a window planter is really going to help make this part just seem a little bit warmer and like a little bit cozier too. You can come down here, do the same thing right there. That to me just really helps dress up the windows and makes them look a lot nicer. So something else I want to do is actually add a stair from the this balcony up here to that one down there. My guess is that this would actually be the entryway here that you can kind of climb through. And that leads out to this deck on this side. And what I want to do with this actually is just put an archway here to kind of indicate like a little crawl space door here. I actually really like that for some reason. So yeah, we're going to add an archway here. And now it's kind of like we can step out from there. Then we're on this level. We have a beautiful view of the farm around us as well as the mountains. And then we can wrap ourselves all the way around. We get a beautiful view of the watchtower too. Now what I want to do to add some character to the build is actually add some vines growing off the side here. I don't want to do too many, but vines hanging off on key parts of the build are really going to help this just flow a little bit nicer. And overall just, in my opinion, make the build look a lot better. So something simple like that on the corner really helps this space feel a little bit nicer. And we can do the same thing on this side too. So I think at first I wasn't really totally in love with the build, but as I've kind of spent more time with it, it's slowly kind of growing on me. I think what we have here is pretty solid. And now that we're decorating it, I can kind of sort of see the vision that I had for it originally. So I don't want to overdo the vines too much. I'm just going to add it in a couple of spaces that I think look sort of blank. So I feel like most of this build looks pretty detailed, but there are some spaces like right here, kind of an empty space that we can fill in. And that's really my whole design process with where I decide where leaves go or not, is if I look at a space and I think it looks empty, that's kind of an indication like, okay, this is the spot for some vines hanging down. So we can do a couple just off the top of the tower here. I think I'm going to kind of clean this up just a little bit. I think what I actually want here is more of a this sort of look rather than, yeah, that to me looks a little bit better. So now it's all about just tweaking what we have and kind of improving it as we go. And to really help give this build a lot of character, I'm going to take some ivy here and just kind of throw these along some of the walls. So it's kind of growing down here. I think that just looks fantastic having multiple layers here, all kind of working together. So this part of the wall looks a little bit flat to me, so that's a good indication to come in here with some leaves, kind of fill in the space there. And just like that, I feel like the build is starting to look a lot better. So it doesn't really take much to improve the look of a build. But you know, just adding some leaves here and there really helps add character to everything. So I think another detail we could add to this windmill is definitely a little chimney coming out the top. So what I'm going to do is grab some of our brick here and kind of think about where we want a chimney. I think somewhere towards this side of the house would be the best location for that. And I'm going to kind of go for like a obnoxious looking chimney just straight out the top. And this to me is just going to help visually balance the how weighty this side of the build is. It's kind of hard to explain like my whole design process, but it's basically I just try to make everything feel balanced. So I want to grab our Gothic arches here, and these make the perfect chimney top. So to me the Gothic arch makes the perfect top for a chimney. That just looks fantastic. Now the windmill has like a nice warm glow to it. So what I want to do is actually add something like that. This just helps give the chimney more of a rounded look rather than it being super blocky. I kind of like the look of that. I think the chimney might be a bit too big, but let's try out a different archway instead. So instead of the Gothic arch, let's go for a rounded one. I think that to me that looks a little bit better than the Gothic archway because it's not so steep. So we'll go with that. So to help blend in the chimney here, I'm gonna grab vertical quarters and just kind of throw these along the sides here. And this just kind of helps connect the stairs to the chimney. And again, helps round it out. I was thinking of turning these bricks into stairs too. Something like that. I think that actually kind of fixes the problem I was having with the chimney looking out of place. So let's do this. Let's actually replace those with bricks. And now I think this to me is kind of the look I was going for. I'm just going to add some more leaves there to help kind of blend in the chimney with the roof. I think this looks pretty cool. Part of me wants to bring some leaves out to this side too, but that might be overdoing it just a little bit. But the good thing about overdoing is we can always undo it. It's not like set in stone here. No, I'm really happy with the exterior here. This is exactly what I was looking for. And I think for the most part, our windmill is actually done exterior wise. There's just a couple more details we can throw in here, but this is exactly what I was looking for. And now that we have a nice base layer done, we can come in here with our little details and just kind of throw these around the build. So things like little edges that we can add to the balcony here, just to, you know, make that look a little bit nicer. This is where mods like Conquest Reforged really become fun, is all the little incremental building things we can throw in here. So to help blend the tutoring into the roof, I'm gonna grab some vertical slabs here and bring out the wall like that. So that way it goes from the stair to the slab to the tutoring, and it just kind of helps it all blend in together here. And we can even go as far as adding like little lips above it too, just like that. So this is like the fun part for me, is coming in and actually detailing everything out. And you can see now the tutoring actually looks like it's part of the roof rather than it was placed in. So I think what makes Conquest Reforged so much fun is that every single block has different states that you can turn it into. So we can grab like these little window sills right here and throw those underneath our brick. These kind of help these windows feel a little bit nicer. And definitely on things like here at the tower, just having like a little bit of a lip out of the windows really helps. Do something like that. Actually, I think for this, I'll go with our original idea that we had. I want to go around the edges of the tower here and just kind of throw in a little bit of a lip block right there. It just kind of does something for me. I just love little details like that. It just really makes the build come to life. Actually, I actually like seeing the sun come through the wind sail here. So to help give this roof a little bit more character, what I want to actually do is grab old slate roof tiles. And I'm just going to kind of replace some of the tiles that we have here. So it's a very subtle detail, but I feel like it just kind of makes sense why, you know, if we have vines growing on the roof, having some of the roof tiles be a little bit more worn down just makes sense to me. So in locations like this, it just kind of makes sense that these tiles are more worn down. So we'll go with something like that. And then the same on this side. I absolutely love throwing in details in my builds. I think this is where I get the most enjoyment out of playing games like Minecraft. And honestly, like, subtle details are such like it doesn't seem like they would do a whole lot, but whenever we actually zoom out and look at the build from a distance, it's really gonna showcase all the texturing we did here. And yeah, as we look at the roof from a distance now there's like some very subtle changes in the texturing. Alright, with the windmill like 80% complete exterior wise, I think this would be the perfect time to actually head towards the watchtower and see what this looks like. But I really am happy with how the farm turned out, and it's going to be really fun to come in here and actually start texturing out even like the walls around the farm, having like pathways, weave in between everything. And something else we haven't even done yet is actually terraforming, so we can add like very incremental steps between all these blocks. So if we take our grass block here, you can see we have grass block layers. And we can do things like this, where we make basically grass slabs between all the layers like this. And we can do this literally all the way around, and we can have these really nice, long flowing hills. But heading towards the watchtower now. For whatever reason, whenever I walk through the woods in this game, I get such a nostalgic feeling. It's going to be so much fun actually pathing through all the woods. But in this clearing in the woods, we have a nice view of the tavern, but we can't quite see the windmill from here. So let's see if we can find a little better vantage point here. So kind of coming over here to this clearing, we get a little bit nicer view of the windmill. Actually, the sail looks a lot better than I thought it would from this distance. That actually looks really convincing. But our watchtower is just off in this direction, so let's head through these woods. And I love, like, at least in the BSL shaders, you can see light rays illuminating different parts of the forest floor here. Looks so cool. So coming up to a clearing, we're just getting to the base of the watchtower now. And what's kind of nice is it's actually starting to turn sunset. And yeah, the windmill looks fantastic, and we can actually see this faint little outline of the farms around it. That's actually perfect. Let's make our way to the top of the watchtower so we can really appreciate the view that we have. I absolutely love this time of day. But yeah, the windmill just looks amazing. I think we definitely made the right call having the wind sail on this side rather than inward. And yeah, we just have so much land to play with. I think in the next episode, we'll actually go in there and detail it out. But thank you guys so much for watching this video and subscribing. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next one.